In today's video, we have some NHL Training Camp updates, including some very key injuries and some updates on the unsigned key RFA players that are still looking for new contracts. All that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top here, today we have a lot of updates coming from various NHL training camps around the league. At this point in time, all teams have had a chance to open their camps up, complete their medicals, and have on-ice sessions. So at this point, we're starting to get more and more updates on players here as the time goes on. We also had our first preseason game kick off in China, as well as the Bruins battled the Flames. The Bruins did end up winning that game in a shootout, and it looks as though they put on a great game for the crowd over there in China. So certainly great to see NHL hockey officially back with on-ice action. We do have some updates here on some of the unsigned RFAs, and we'll get to that here momentarily. But first, let's jump around to some of the other items coming out of training camps here around the NHL. First up, the Tampa Bay Lightning have placed defenseman Jake Dotson on unconditional waivers for the purpose of buyouts due to a material breach of contract. Dotson did end up clearing waivers as well, so at this point in time, technically he is an unrestricted free agent. I did see a report indicating that himself, along with his agent, perhaps the PA as well behind him, they are going to try to dispute this and file an appeal here to see if this can be reversed. Obviously, the main speculation around this was that the Tampa Bay Lightning were very unhappy with his conditioning when he arrived at training camp. Obviously, we've heard of players in the past, obviously, showing up to camp not being in as good a shape as they were expected to be, teams not being happy, but I don't recall ever seeing a situation where a player actually ended up being terminated and put through as a material breach with this happening. So if this is true, then you can only suspect that it must have been, a severe thing where he was, incredibly out of shape or something. I mean, at this point in time, the Tampa Bay Lightning hasn't really given us much to go on here, and they also indicated they wouldn't be commenting on the situation any further, so it's really hard to say if we'll get any additional information here or not. To be honest, I'm not really sure Jake Dotson had a solid spot on this team anyways, in the top 6 defensemen at least. For a young player like Dotson here to have this happen to him, you can't help but wonder what really happened and if we'll get any additional information to actually confirm what really went down here. Was it conditioning or was it something else? So assuming that any attempts at an appeal of this is not successful, then Dotson will be a UFA. It's hard to say if another team signs him and takes a chance or not. I do think there'd be a fair bit of teams would be interested under most circumstances, but due to the nature of how this came about, there certainly will be a lot of questions to be asked and hard to say what his future really holds. We do have a few notes out of the Chicago Blackhawks training camp, which are not good news to get things started here for the Hawks' new season. Goaltender Corey Crawford will not be ready to start this season. Crawford is still suffering from concussion-like symptoms and hasn't fully recovered and is not, at this point at least, cleared to play. So obviously that's not good news. I mean, Corey Crawford being out for so long last year certainly played a large role in the Hawks' demise last year and putting them so low in the standings. Obviously, I know a lot of us were saying that if Corey Crawford is healthy and playing up to his normal standards, that would be a huge lift and a huge boost here for the Hawks rebounding into this year. In my opinion, the Chicago Blackhawks defense is certainly another issue with that club, and they're going to have an even further problem here, learning that Connor Murphy will be out for an extended period of time as well. Connor Murphy is suffering from a back injury and could be sidelined upwards of 2 months, so obviously that is not good news for the Chicago Blackhawks, as their top goalie and one of their top 6 defensemen certainly suffering from injuries right off the get-go here. Also, Brent Seabrook also had a minor injury as well. Is expected to miss about a week at training camp, but at this point in time, we have no reason to believe that he wouldn't be ready for opening night. Now, speaking of goaltenders who may not be ready to start the season, let's talk about New Jersey Devils goaltender Corey Schneider. Now, as we know, Corey Schneider did have off-season hip surgery, and at this point in time, it does look as though he will not be ready to go come opening night, as he's still recovering from that surgery and is not completely recovered and ready to play as of right now. Obviously, at this point in time, that certainly puts a lot of pressure on Keith Kincaid. Obviously, last year, Kincaid did have to play a lot during Schneider's absence, and at times did look pretty solid, but we'll see here what happens with the goaltending situation in New Jersey. Obviously, this is a big surgery for Schneider to recover from. Obviously, the flexibility of a goaltender in their hips is a key part of their ability to be able to move around and be effective here. So we'll see how this impacts Schneider long term. Obviously, not having Corey Schneider available for opening night is not a great thing for the Devils here, but hopefully Keith Kincaid can kind of carry the ball here while Schneider fully recovers. And hopefully when Schneider comes back, he can kind of get back to form here and be effective for New Jersey down the stretch for the season. Jumping over to the Vancouver Canucks, a newly signed forward Antoine Roussell. It is possible Roussell could end up missing all or most of training camp here, as he ended up suffering a concussion in an informal hockey scrimmage here leading up to training camp right before training camp opened. So obviously, as you know, with concussions, they're very unpredictable, and it's just not really clear how long this is going to take. So, being not what it is quite possible with the length of training camp that Roussell may end up missing all or most of that period of time, and potentially could start the season on injury reserve. It's a very unfortunate thing for somebody coming to a new team, especially. Obviously, as we know, Antoine Roussell is a tough customer. I'm sure he'll rebound and be back, but it's just hard to say how long. So obviously not a great start to his time here with the Vancouver Canucks. Montreal Canadiens added veteran forward Joel Ward to their roster for training camp on a professional tryout. Obviously Joel Ward is getting up there in years, but certainly feels he can still be productive and has been looking for an opportunity here to remain in the NHL. Joel Ward has bounced around a little bit in the NHL. Obviously got started with Nashville, played with the Capitals, also played with most recently with the San Jose Sharks. Had a fairly productive career. Obviously Joel Ward got a little bit of a later start to his NHL career. One of the few players you actually see come out of the Canadian University hockey scene to make it in the NHL and actually make it as a solid NHLer. So even though he was a bit of a late bloomer making it to the NHL, he's made himself a pretty solid career out of it. And obviously, like I said, he still feels he can be productive, still looking to play. So we'll see how things go with Montreal Canadiens in training camp here with Joel Ward and see if he can earn himself an opportunity to keep his career going for one more year. Florida Panthers forward Jamie McGinn could be out for an extended period of time as well. Obviously, he ended up having to have back surgery. It's not really clear at this point in time exactly how long he'll be out. But I think due to the nature of the injury and the surgery sustained here, I do think it's quite likely that McGinn is going to be out for an extended period of time and could miss a big chunk of the 18-19 NHL season. Thankfully, the Florida Panthers do have a lot of forwards under contract. They do have a lot of depth at center ice. Obviously, the Florida Panthers likely will miss McGinn in their lineup in the bottom six role, but at this point in time, they do have plenty of guys who could certainly take over and play that role effectively for them. So McGinn likely goes on LTIR and stays that way for a big chunk of the 18-19 season. Now let's jump over here and take a look at some of the unsigned RFAs. Just a few quick updates and the news and notes and rumors have been around what's holding up some of these contracts from taking place here. Now let's start here with the Toronto Maple Leafs and forward William Nylander. Now, obviously, Nylander is yet to come to a new deal here with the Leafs. I've seen different speculations out there indicating that he's willing to accept a bridge deal. Some say he's really wants a long-term deal, which is what's holding this up. I've seen other reports suggesting that it's more dollars than term, and so it's hard to say exactly what is the case. But the latest speculation I've seen is that he's seeking a contract close to what Leon Draisaitl is earning, and he's looking for around $8 million, where the team seems to be more comfortable somewhere between 6 and 6.5. I'm not sure exactly what type of term he's looking for. If he could get $8 million, I'm guessing he probably would accept a shorter term, probably in the 2 to 3 year range. As we know, the Leafs also have some big deals coming up for Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, which will have to be in place by this time next year. So obviously those players very well could play through the season, and get this taken care of next summer, or it could end up being done somewhere this year. Either way, there's no big rush for those two. They still have a year left on their entry-level deals, but Nylander needs a deal now to get to training camp and get himself in playing shape here so that he can join his team for the start of the year. Obviously, as more time drags on, this is not going to be good for the player. We've heard it, on a number of cases and seen before in the past when players miss training camp. It quite often does, limit their ability at the start of the year and takes a while to kind of get caught up, which usually impacts their production and how much they can help the team. So obviously, at this point in time, if William Nylander is looking for $8 million, if he won't budge, it's hard to say how long this is going to be drug out here if that is indeed true. One thing that I thought and mentioned when Tavares was first signed as well with the Leafs, obviously, as much as he earned that contract, he's been around a long time, had a very productive career. You can't help but wonder if some of the younger guys like a Nylander, for example, might be feeling like, you obviously backed up the Brinks truck and gave Tavares all this money as an outsider basically coming into the organization, whereas I've been here for a number of years now, being drafted and developed and helping this team build towards more success, and now I'm having a hard time getting paid. So you can't help but wonder if somehow that might be playing into some of this is why he's being so difficult. Question to you, especially if you're a Leaf fan, if William Nylander is looking for $8 million, how do you handle that, and how long do you see this dragging out? Because if that's what he's looking for, I really don't see him getting it. And it's just hard to say how long this drags on here before it gets resolved. At this point in time, though, considering how deep the Leafs are and how many forwards they have who could possibly fill the forward positions, I think that the leverage right now is in the Leafs side, not on the player's side. And at this point in time, if he doesn't make the start of the season and somebody takes his spot on that top line playing with Austin Matthews and it works well, he may very well have a hard time getting back there, which could have more of an impact on him longer term here. So let me know what you think of William Nylander and how are they going to go about getting this resolved. Now jumping over to take a look at a few of the defensemen here, Darnell Nurse and Josh Morrissey. Obviously you can't help but wonder, especially in case of Nurse and Theodore here, that the leverage is more in favor of the player in those particular cases. Obviously Darnell Nurse and the Edmonton Oilers, Nurse knows that Sekera's out longer term. They already have not the greatest defense core to begin with. Obviously, Nurse knows that the Oilers need him really quite a bit. If they go into the season without Sekera and Nurse, that's going to create an even bigger problem for the team. So it seems as though he's kind of playing that up and using that to his advantage here to try to get more closer to the contract he wants. The reports I've seen indicate that Nurse and the Oilers are about $200,000 to $300,000 apart on a contract offer. Now, one thing though is that the Oilers are very tight to the cap here. They only have $3.9 million available. Obviously, I'm sure they're going to want a little bit of wiggle room left over. So, somewhere between 3.5 and 3.75 likely would be the landing spot. I don't know exactly what it is that Nurse is asking for, but at this point in time, I think the leverage is with the player. He knows it, and he's certainly trying to take advantage to get the deal that he wants done. Same goes for Shea Theodore and the Vegas Golden Knights. In the beginning of the negotiations between Vegas and Shea Theodore, I think the leverage was in the team side, really, but now I think it's more on the player side, because in the beginning, Nate Schmidt wasn't suspended. If Vegas goes into the season here without Schmidt and Theodore, that's a big blow to their back end, and I think this player at this point knows that they very well can't afford to do that without getting off to a slow start here, and that could certainly impact things down the road. Every game and every point or 2 points that you can earn in every game can certainly have a big impact on your playoff chances and where you finish in the standings. So at this point in time, it's another case, I think, of the player having the leverage here, and hopefully Vegas can get this sorted out soon. The last I've heard is that they're quite a ways apart, but they've been very tight-lipped on what the team or player is really offering or asking for here. So hard to say how that gets resolved, but in my opinion, Vegas needs to make this very paramount here and get this looked after right away, so they don't start the season without Schmidt and Theodore both. As far as the other unsigned RFAs like Josh Morrissey, Nick Ritchie, as well as Sam Reinhart, we really don't have any further updates on those. The only indications we have here is that there's obviously still a ways apart with their teams. In Nick Ritchie's case, I really don't understand that one. Nick Ritchie's been very inconsistent and hasn't really performed at a higher level coming out of his entry-level deal. You think really that he'd be willing to take a 1 or 2 year contract short term to kind of prove himself. To kind of re-earn that longer-term, bigger money deal that he might be looking for. But at this point in time, all these players appear to be a ways apart. At this point, they've all missed a few days of training camp. The longer this drags on, it's going to hurt the team, could hurt the player. So at this point in time, we don't have any other updates on those other players, but it certainly seems as though that everybody involved would like to get them resolved as soon as possible. Now, if you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.